We're here, and the age of renewables has arrived. Renewable energy is a technology and industry that's been growing for quite a number of decades, has been growing at a pretty consistent rate of over 10% compounded annual growth for quite a while. But we've reached a tipping point in renewables in that renewables now make sense on a subsidy-free basis, and that's a really significant point. Over the last couple of decades, renewables growth has primarily been driven by jurisdictions that were trying to take early action for environmental reasons. So places like Germany, Spain, Ontario, California, all those places implemented policies that had pretty strong incentives for renewables and helped grow the renewable energy industry globally around the world. And as a result of that early adoption, the prices of renewables has really continued to come down. The technologies continued to improve. And we've now reached the tipping point where, like I said, renewables make sense on a subsidy-free basis. So renewables now make sense in any jurisdiction that requires new power generation. And I think the implications for that are pretty significant, and I believe we're going to see over the next decade an explosion of renewable energy growth across the globe, and again, primarily driven by economic considerations. If you can have the lowest cost technology also be the cleanest technology, I think it's a pretty compelling case. So in terms of Alberta, Alberta has a really interesting opportunity. So we're we have excellent fossil fuel resources, which is really well known, but we also have some of the best renewable energy resources in the world. We have some of the best onshore wind resources. We have some of the best solar resources, despite being really far north. Alberta has more than 300 days a year of sunshine. We're truly the sunshine state of the north with a solar resource that's comparable to Florida. So, lots of renewable energy opportunity in Alberta. But the other thing that we have in Alberta is that we're also the only deregulated power generation market in the country, and it's the only market where it's possible for corporates and renewable energy projects to contract directly and enter into bilateral contracting. And what that does is it really provides a market in Alberta that can be the source of greening the grid for any company, or greening the operations for any companies that are looking to green their Canadian operations. It's really quite interesting, and it's really an example of how Alberta has more to export than oil through contentious pipelines. We also have the ability to export renewable energy credits across the country. There's other reasons why corporates should be looking at Alberta. Like I said, phenomenal renewable energy resources, so allows renewables to be procured at a low cost. We're the only deregulated power generation market in the country, which makes it, at the end of the day, the only market where bilateral contracting is possible. But we're also the most emissions-intensive grid. So for companies that are looking to get the biggest bang for their buck, the biggest environmental impact for the amount of investment, Alberta is the place to do it. The reason that is because the vast majority, or the majority of our electricity today comes from coal, which is quite emissions intensive, and the opportunity to displace that high emissions intensity generation with no emissions-free renewables, really has the opportunity to provide a very tangible and high impact in terms of reducing or improving overall environmental performance. One of the areas that we've seen renewables really been growing over the last number of years is through direct contracting between projects and corporates. Traditionally, renewables has grown on the back of government support, like I mentioned, where governments all around the world would offer long-term contracts, long-term power purchase agreements for renewable projects to see them, develop and be built out. And what we're seeing now is that corporates are starting to fill the role that governments had traditionally been playing, as corporates try to improve their corporate sustainability. There's a number of corporates all around the world that have committed to going 100% renewables. That's in order to meet their sustainability goals. Those sustainability goals exist for a number of different reasons. Companies, investors that are looking for companies to manage their carbon liability. Employees, for the purposes of recruiting and retaining new employees. Employees are increasingly interested in working for companies that have a social and an environmental conscience. And implementing renewables and buying renewables to essentially green the operations of companies is something that has been really interesting and something that has really taken off in the United States. So in 2018 alone, there was more than $10 billion of new renewable energy projects that were brought online on the back of virtual power purchase agreements with corporates. And what we see is an opportunity to bring that same type of approach to Canada, and specifically Alberta, to see the renewable energy sector grow in this province as well, so that companies, Canadian companies, can green their Canadian operations and meet their sustainability goals. So a little bit about corporate PPAs. So like I mentioned, traditionally power projects are built on the back of a power purchase agreement. That's a long-term contract by which an entity, used to be government, would offer a long-term purchase agreement to renewable energy project. Like I said, it's being increasingly replaced by corporates that are doing the same thing. And the mechanism by which that makes the most sense in Alberta, and the mechanism by which that has been done for corporates in the United States to date, is through what's called a virtual power purchase agreement, or a VPPA. And essentially, what a VPPA is a corporate party provides price certainty to a renewable energy project, and in return for providing that price certainty, the corporate obtains all the environmental attributes associated with the project, or all the RECs, or renewable energy credits, whatever that term is used. It's got a few different terms, but essentially to claim the environmental benefits that that project generates. And the way a VPPA would work in the Alberta market is a company would offer a fixed price guarantee for all the power that's produced. That power continues to get sold in the Alberta power pool. If the project realizes a price that's lower than the price guarantee provided by the corporate would make a payment to the project to true it up to that level. But what we're seeing now with the way renewable energy prices have continued to come down, we're seeing it's going to be more likely on the other side that if the project sells into the market and receives a higher price than what the corporate guarantees, then the corporate gets paid. And I believe we're moving into a world now where environmental attributes can be procured under long-term contracts by corporates at no cost, or possibly even be a profitable transaction, as corporates trade that price certainty for a project in return for claiming the environmental benefits at a very low price.